The Lonely Rat. Reflections on 2020. The greatest true life disaster movie that can never be shown. When we look back on 2020, our children will ask, why are the pages ripped out from our history books? They deserve to know the truth, the pandemic of tears, loneliness and isolation that stole away the year that nobody ever believed would break the dream life barrier. For those that did live, though, through it, in it, endured it, survived it, we have no right to be proud we came out the other side. We can only recount with the weakness of reflection, the ineptitude of perception, and ultimately, as we may come to learn, the submission and acceptance of our foolish deception. So be brave when their children ask. Reject any inclination to fake it, to fade it, to blur the realities of the year that changed every other year that came after it. 2020 made George Orwell's hallucinogenic, horror-filled obscurity tumble to the depths of the dusty, forgotten, well-thumbed books that may now never be revived. But for the actors, the cast, the players of the 2020 docudrama, we didn't need to dream or dramatise anymore. Our path was set, our existence controlled and caged like disease-ridden rodents told to just sit back and stay indoors. The authors and directors of our pandemic blockbuster thriller needed little energy or exertion to create, craft, or think twice about any carefully curated script, as a real-life 24-hour 4D cinematic production unfolded right before our eyes. One in which the left behind and the downtrodden would become a vast endangered species, wounded of heart and mind that no amount of NLP, CBT or EDM REM flickering eyelids would ever succeed in ridding of the rapidly decaying scar tissue it created. We were blind even before the viral-induced blindness took hold, for when the ripples began we laughed and ridiculed in the blinkered and vain belief it was not our issue. Not in my back garden, we said, smirking and smug, inwardly smiling with belligerent, misguided confidence. We soon regretted our nonchalance, as ripples became waves. The dirty and diseased waters of Wuhan surged and spread a tsunami of contaminant, as festering and more frequent flights brought contagion and chaos to our own shores. A landslide of political fallout, pretense and posturing had made no flood barrier to contain this. Rather than being opened, our eyes became sore, small, pink portholes that could see no further than our own homes. Our prisons, cages for our new rodent lifestyles, forced into a furlough of long days. Peering out from behind precious panes of protective glass as we craved just a glimpse of normality, reality, any brief sign of activity from the rows of the lockdown listless dwellings obediently doing just the same. On occasion, our days would be briefly touched with childlike fascination as we caught glimpses of the bold and daring amongst us, bravely scurrying from the security of their cage in a desperate quest to gather sustenance. But with it always came the risk of the unseen. Everywhere, on everything, in a kiss, a hug, a touch, the stare of a stranger coming just that little bit too close, not distanced, smothering their own face to hide the briefest of smokers' coughs, or simply the sounds of someone open-mouthed, wailing, praying, or even singing. Singing perhaps to a child innocently celebrating a birthday, completely unaware that their pink candy popping cake was made possible only by the cashless trade for a bag of flour, a tank of petrol, or half an hour's release to stroll the square perimeter of the cages that hold us. Our time to smile was rationed to the joys of the rarest of sacrificial acts, whether from friends, parents, or most rewardingly from complete strangers. Not often, but on fortunate occasion, humanity would spoil us by bringing forth the smallest, the most important, the chocolate button, the grape, the pumpkin seeds dropped from the crust of a homemade bread loaf by a grandma whose stolen memory we all craved to have ourselves. Anything rather than the repeated, searing pain, the dread of waking up alone, except for the face of blatant realization staring you straight in the eyes, summoning you, teasing you, like a silent narcissist just enjoying watching its victims run straight through barbed wire. It was never a dream. Every day we would fight the visions, question the sanity, reality, surrealism of it all, until the sudden piercing sound of ambulance sirens pacing, chasing, taking away the weak, the rejected, those amongst us that had already given up. And then all we had was to wait in silence for the 5 o'clock bell to chime. It was as though there was a daily roll call, a register, a teacher demanding her pupils rallied to a finger click. Like prisoners in our cages, we looked on as daily government loud hailings of death tolls, false promises, cheating charts and ever-increasing losses did nothing but accelerate our fear as we clung to the bars of the only thing we had to protect us, our sawdust-laden cages. All we had now was time in which to dream, lust, crave, just one more chance to taste, to smell. As roses bloomed and boasted in their glorious, provocative new freedom, more alive, more moist, more robust, more fragrant than they had ever been before, but teasing us every moment with their smug abundance of all that was now denied to us, except maybe for the lucky few, whose vision could still bring occasional blurred euphoria. The sight of the most bold, most bright of nature's richest theatre of colour, texture, explosions of all that our senses would now have to recall as long fading memories. The imbalancing may have been unintentional to those that played the callous game of which we were the unknowing, unconscious test subjects. But nature knew. Nature smiled, ridiculed, savoured its righteous supremacy, taken to new heights as it looked down and almost appeared to laugh at us. Normally discreet and fearful, a new animal abundance set up home on our streets, our gardens, our towns, and above us, even in the skies, the weakest and smallest of birds turned mischievous predator, taking all that the looters left behind, ravaging every berry from every bush, plant, tree in our gardens, but not content with stopping there. They began stealing even that which we would have previously laughed at them for wanting. Our precious few hours of sleep, of release, of escape. Their revenge was sweet. Their songs began earlier, louder, more boisterous, more joyful, more judging, almost as though they had collectively agreed it was time for them to cackle, to scorn, to punish our former waste and ignorance, as they looked down on the new rodent captives, confined to grey sofas, watching life on square plasma screens from inside their new caged existence. This is the truth that we should share with our children. 2020, the year that saw millions, perhaps even billions of us stripped of all identity, without creed, colour, race or religion to divide us, or so it began, until the truth finally started to emerge, until our tiny pink eyes finally regained the ability to really see. We were all the same, whether mother, father, child, orphan. People across the world were now the creatures of confinement, of cages, of curiosity to be prodded and poked, while governments and scientists revelled in the eccentricities and outpourings of their lab rats, playing along nicely as part of a crude, sadistic challenge, which we now realise was possibly the most extravagant and beguiling experiment of all time, of all humanity. Don't tell the children what followed. For now, the rest must remain a grim, grey nightmare of history, and we should just be glad we are part of the few that, in body at least, survived. So much for being top of the ladder, the biggest and best of the world-beating brains in the animal world. As the lab rats of 2020, we have no excuses. We failed, and we deserved all that we got. Many died. Thousands were left maimed. Some protested. Some never believed, and inevitably growing numbers rioted. It didn't matter, because in the end, eventually, many, most, all of us cried. We convince ourselves that's all in the past now. But the real, unsanitized sadness is that the evidence was all neatly buried in underground time capsules for our school children to dig up, when there were no rats left to do it for them.